Here's Mustafa Talba, the executive director of the UN Environmental Program. He warned, the world faces an ecological disaster as final as nuclear war unless governments act now. Without action, the future will bring, by the turn of the century, an environmental catastrophe which will witness devastation as complete, as irreversible as any nuclear holocaust. I don't know if you heard that statement. It was made in May of 1982. Did that happen? Here's Noel Brown, the New York director of the UN Environmental Program. This is some reporting on what he had said. A senior UN environmental official says entire nations could be wiped off the face of the earth by rising sea levels if the global warming trend is not reversed within 12 years. Coastal flooding and crop failures would create an exodus of eco-refugees, threatening political chaos. 1989. Stop playing the Guess the Year game. The chief of the UN's International Panel on Climate Change, 2007. If there's no action before 2012, that is too late. What we do in the next 2 to 3 years will determine our future. How about Prince Charles? He's really in touch with the common people. Look at him hanging out on his lazy boy watching TV. March 2009. We have less than 100 months to alter our behavior before we risk catastrophic climate change. We have 100 months to act. Those 100 months have passed. We have 7 years, he says in 2009. 86 months, he says in 2010. 2014, we are running out of time. How many times have I found myself saying this over the recent years? How about this young lady?
People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Okay, so, we've been treated to this, scowling young lady lecturing us about how terrible it is to think about economic growth and having fun or being happy. Let's take a quick talk, I know I'm going on for a while here, about these climate models and what they're missing. So earlier we talked about the limits to growth and how LaRouche identified what was deliberately left out of this book on purpose, namely human creativity. In other words, they were writing a book not about human civilization, but about any civilization that stopped progressing and showed why it would be doomed. So let's take a look at these climate models and where they come from. So the very same chart of temperatures in the United States was published using the same data, okay, in 1999 and then in 2006. If we look at what the temperature change was from this, we can see this peak in the 1930s to what it was in 1999, the reporting of the data changed. In 1999, NASA, NOAA said, oh, it went down 0.6 degrees. In 2006, they said, no, it actually increased over that same time period. The past changed. The IPCC in 1990 acknowledged that there was a medieval warm period centered around 1200 AD, where temperatures in Europe were significantly warmer. This occurred around the world, followed by a little ice age, in which rivers froze that usually didn't, harvests were impacted. Compare that same time series as presented in the 2001 IPCC report. Now, the temperature is basically constant, but with industrialization, it takes off. These data aren't actually accurate, but like the earlier limits to growth, they're ignoring something very important, which is that our planet does not exist only in a solar system, but in a galaxy in which there are stars exploding, being formed, supernovas, a lot going on. What's the relationship? Well, if we take a look over the very, I'm going to skip this one, it's too much. This is about the change in the Earth's orbital eccentricity here and the climate. Let's take a look at something much simpler. The relationship between cosmic radiation, in red, and in blue, the level of cloud formation. there's a connection between clouds and cosmic radiation coming from beyond our solar system and impacting our Earth significantly. If we take a look at relationships between temperature and cosmic rays, we see something very compelling. Far more compelling, in fact, than carbon dioxide changes in the atmosphere. Much of this work has been done by Jasper Kirkby and by Henrik Svensmark in Denmark. What they look at is how it is that cosmic radiation is able to cause the formation of what are called cloud condensation nuclei, where you can have water vapor in the air, but it doesn't necessarily turn into a cloud. Now, what do clouds do? They're white. You can see them. They reflect light. More clouds, less heat from the sun. Cosmic radiation can create condensation nuclei. This has been seen observationally and through an experiment at CERN, the European Center for Nuclear Research, where man-made cosmic rays, the equivalent of cosmic rays, were created and used to create cloud condensation nuclei. So there's something major involved in determining our climate that these models simply leave out, that Greta Thunberg doesn't, look at when she's yelling and scolding people. The last thing I want to point out is the enormous cost of these supposed save the planet things, of CO2 reduction. First off, we should be very happy about our increase in CO2. Take a look here at the amount of CO2 emitted per person and life expectancy. Each dot is a country. Emitting CO2 on its own doesn't make you live longer. If you go down and, if you go burn down a building, that doesn't mean you're going to live to 150. But on a societal level, the energy made available by fossil fuels has tremendously expanded our life expectancy. The amount of energy available to us in the form of electricity, look at how that relates to a reduction in infant mortality. Energy is an essential component of the infrastructure needed to have higher living standards. When we look at the unequal and really devastating inequalities in development across the planet, where you can see some areas, are just inhospitable, so maybe there's less development there, but that really isn't the full story at all. Take a look at the difference between North and South Korea, if you can pick them out. Take a look at what's right in the middle of the screen. Take a look at Africa. Where's the light? This is satellite pictures of the Earth at night. Where's the light? For African nations to become developed, what will supply the power for this? It's not going to be windmills. So there's a specific criterion Lyndon LaRouche points to on what it takes to power an economy, and this is what I'm going to wrap up with. He wrote that, in general, the potential productivity of an economy is limited on the higher side by the energy density of the basic modes of energy production being used by that economy. The higher the energy density, the cheaper the energy can be in terms of social costs of producing energy, and the more abundant the energy available for expanding the economy. Cheaper the energy can be in terms of social costs of producing energy. This isn't about subsidies and getting paid to put solar panels on your roof. What does it take for us as a society to produce the needed energy? Okay, he continues, the step-by-step advance from a full-scale fission energy economy, our current form of nuclear power, into a fusion energy economy, what powers the sun, this is the unique path of development which enables our nation and the world to increase the effective rate of capital formation into the next century and beyond. It is the only policy which leads to this successful survival of our civilization. So the only thing that allows us to live indefinitely into the future, the only kind of growth that is sustainable, is not slow growth or degrowth. It's accelerating growth. characterized by higher energy densities of the power made available to us. So the physical energy of wind blowing through a turbine, extremely low. The power of the atomic nucleus, of rearranging a nucleus, of interactions among nuclei, a million times more energetic than chemical reactions like coal or natural gas. This is the key to unlocking what will completely transform our idea of resources in a way that you could really only compare it to the advent of the steam engine, which allowed us to turn fuels into motion, making it possible to create labor performed by rocks. A transformation beyond that is what we have in front of us. And the way to make that happen is not going to be by building windmills, solar panels, and saying, oh, we're terrible sinners for destroying the earth. It's to recognize that we have a unique capability to create resources where they did not exist before, and to the extent that CO2 affects the climate, which I'm sure it does, to be able to deal easily with whatever changes it brings about, which we've already done. I mean, deaths due to extreme weather are down to 1 or 2% what they were a century or two ago. Not because the weather changed, but because we're more resilient. We're able to create our own environments and improve our own environments increasingly in a way that gives us an independence that is not achieved by the animals, which are just out there hit by whatever comes their way. We're in control of our environment. We create a synthetic, nurturing environment for ourselves, and improving the quality of that, that's the way to move forward.